Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to change the world one starfish or one person at a time. Together, we can change the world. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe, all the stuff. Really excited for our guest today. Mike Wolters is in Salt Lake City. He's a realtor. He's been in the industry about 9 years, family guy, has 40 agents he works with that he's built up over the last 9 years. Thank you so much for being with us. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your journey. Let's just start with the easy part, I guess. Tell us a little bit about your journey in the last 9 years. What got you into real estate? You know, how has it kind of been? What are some, why are you still in it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, my journey is a little bit different because I had spent, right out of college, spent 20 years in big box retail. So I was 15 years with Target stores and then another 5 with Best Buy, brands people know and trust. And at the time, my daughter, she probably would have been about 6. She had asked me, because I had missed one of her school performances or school events, and she asked me just bluntly, she's like, "Dad, why do you always miss my school events?"
Ooh.
Yeah, and I was married at the time, and I told my spouse, I said, following that, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need to get out of retail. Because people who know retail know that you're there at turnkey, you're there, you have to be there at certain times, you're there every holiday. And so while I didn't know what I needed to do or what I was going to do, I did know after that stab in the back or stab in the front that I was going to do something different. And started a journey, I think, goes back to what you think about, you attract. And shortly thereafter, my former realtor here in Salt Lake reached out to me, and I didn't think anything of it. But we got together for coffee, and then one coffee led to another. And what I realized a little bit later was that he was looking to build his team. It was small at the time, but he was looking for somebody to help lead it. And that had been my background. So I don't know, after about 6 or 7 months of him courting me to try to figure out how do I get into this space, I said, okay, you know what? He put a book in my hand. In fact, it's this book. It's world renowned, called the Real Estate Millionaire Agent book. Okay, we call it the Red Book. And I was supposed to be over in Denver with Best Buy for some corporate meetings, which I went. But I didn't go to any of the meetings. I read the book cover to cover, and I realized then that there was a model for me to succeed in real estate. So fast forward, it took about a year for me to make that transition because I needed to get licensed, but more importantly, I was going from a healthy 6-figure plus salary to, he was offering me a very small salary plus commissions. Mm-hmm. So I had to save up a lot of money, get rid of some debt, and that took a bit of time.
Makes sense.
So I got into it. First couple of years, it was all about learning. It was about learning how to be a listing agent, learning how to help buyers at a high level. I closed 30 deals my first year, 40 transactions my second year. And after doing 70 transactions, I think you start to get a good feel of what to do, what not to do, and how better to help agents with their contract writing or helping with clients. And so then I was tasked with, okay, now I need you to help me grow this team agent count. And we were at 5 agents at the time. And so that's what I did. That was my background in retail, was hiring and training. And so starting in 2018, up until last year, we grew from 5 agents to nearly 40. And we saw our transaction count more than double. We helped 450 families last year. Cool. And our profitability more than doubled. So that's sort of the story in a nutshell.
Well, it's a good nutshell. So when you went to transition from corporate to entrepreneur, tell us a little bit about some of the struggles. You kind of mentioned, obviously, you went from a pretty healthy paycheck to not a really healthy paycheck. So that's a mindset struggle. How did you kind of work through that, and how did it impact like your relationships around you, your family, life, all of that kind of stuff?
That's such a good question, because by nature, I'm a fighter and I'm a competitor. I competed in college athletics and was fortunate enough to do that at a high level. And so by nature, like I like to compete, and I went all in on myself knowing that I was going to go from a great salary to really very minimal, but knowing that I could make up the difference or as much of the difference by learning the traits and the skills of being a good realtor. And so interesting enough, my first year when I closed 30 units, my taxable income was only like $2,700 less than what I did my last year in retail. So that was pretty cool. However, you asked how it impacted my relationships. I told you I was married, past tense. And so getting into it, I went all in. And I was probably fortunate that my children were young. My daughter was 7 when I started. My son would have been 2.5 or 3. And so it didn't have as big of an impact on them because I've still made all of their events after making that life change, but it did have a big impact on my marriage at the time. And so, obviously you can't undo anything. What needed to be done was done. And as I spring forward, knowing, some of the things I learned in going from a salary W-2 to an entrepreneur, I think I'm better equipped now to help coach and train agents who are making that same type of transition.
What are some tips? Yeah, what are some tips on that? Like, what are some tangible tips that you would recommend that you would have maybe done differently or the same?
Yeah, I think communication, right? Like communicate with those that are around you that you love and trust, and let them know the reality of your situation, right? And just be open about that. Don't let it be a surprise, and don't shy away from the conversation. In fact, we're going through a market shift in the real estate industry, and it's pretty seismic right now. The last couple of years have been, I'll just call it easy. And it's incredibly challenging right now. So a couple of weeks ago, I told my girlfriend, I said, hey, I want to get you in front. I had my daughter there, and I said, I just want you guys to know that you may see me working a bit more. You may see me working a lot more because that's what the business requires. And the support I had from them was something I didn't have before, but no fault of my ex-wife. It was more about I wasn't open in my communication about what I was going through, what needed to be done. So that's what I would coach people on now, is just be open, be clear, and allow yourself to be a little vulnerable too in the process.
Cool. I love that. That's awesome. So what are some other, you've gone from, 5 agents to 40 agents. You've had to have a lot of growth. A lot of people that I know obviously are looking at growing their agencies, whether it's whatever they're doing. Everyone wants, growth is always a good thing if you want to go anywhere. So what are some tips as far as growing that agency that you found that helped you guys go from 5 to 40 agents? What are some things, tangible things that kind of helped you guys do that?
Yeah, well, it may seem simple, but always be recruiting. So as a business owner, even if it's just you got to think about, okay, so what type of leverage can you add and when can you add it, right? Every conversation you have could be a potential recruiting and talent conversation, right? And so once you have that mindset, I think then it's about systematizing how you do it, right? So I'm a coach with Keller Williams Maps. That's our coaching division. I coach on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So I know I'm not able to do recruiting appointments on those days. However, I may be able to take some first recruiting calls on the way home or the way into the office, but I know Mondays and Fridays, that's when I book in my weeks with my recruiting. And so all of our systems, the work that my assistant does, everything's geared around, in this case, recruiting, the systemization and implementation of those models of recruiting. And then that way I keep things in an orderly fashion and things work, right? It's growing up in Keller Williams for the last 9 years, systems models are our backbone. And anytime you implement something, it's like, okay, who's done it? How can I go see who's done something that I want to do without trying to reinvent the wheel? And then you systematize it for for yourself. So hopefully that helped answer that question.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And what are so for a new realtor coming in or a new entrepreneur coming in, when you did start out and you were working all the time,
Yeah.
what helped you? I mean, you did mention you read this book. Do you read a lot? Meditation, visualization? What are some tips that you found that have kept you going through? And even right now, like you said, you're in a market downside. So what are some things that help you get through the days where maybe you don't want to get out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, first off, I think self-care is important, right? I mean, it's one of my core values. And so that's why I get up as early as I do to take care of myself, right? I'm not so much into the visualization or, I probably could be a lot better on the spiritual side. However, I do get up fairly early. I do intermittent fasting, so I don't eat until about noon. But when I get up at 4 or 4:30, it is, I read for half hour and then I'm off to the gym, right? So I think as an entrepreneur, I think having self-care and getting that out early in the day, because if you don't, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't, no.
Right? I think another thing for entrepreneurs is, I do read a lot, but I'm also starting to read less, but go deeper into books. So I just finished reading, in fact, this morning, just finished reading Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I've probably read that book maybe 5 times, but this time I read it with an intentionality I hadn't done. So I was taking notes on my iPad in my notes section of just different things that stuck out. So while I still love to read, I want to try to get more out of what I am reading.
That makes sense. We're studying.
Yeah, and then I think from a visualization piece, I mean, right behind me, we'll probably see a glimpse of my vision board. And
that's what I was wondering about. Yeah.
And you know what? I do that every year. Some people think it's cheesy, yet, I look at there and I had some goals this year, and I knew they were long-term goals. Like I wanted to go to London to finish my 5th major marathon, and we just got back a week ago, right? So in order to make all that happen, it's all front-loaded. Like the planning and the intentionality is front-loaded, right? I wanted to become a coach with Keller Williams, and that's not an easy process, right? So I've had that on my vision board for a couple of years. And so when people ask me about visualization, my response is get it on a vision board and put it somewhere where you're going to see daily.
Yes, that's so good. And then curious, because you have kids, how have you incorporated them in some of the vision and the planning? Because I know some parents do it, some parents maybe don't as much, but I'm curious if you've done that and how have you found that?
Yeah. In fact, every New Year's Eve, we do a couple of things outside of vision boards. And my kids haven't done a vision board, but we also write a letter to ourselves. And we write the letter as if it's the end of the year, and we're just celebrating everything that we've achieved, right? And so we write that January 1st, and then come holiday time at some point, we'll pull that out. And it's amazing when you write something down, there's something subconsciously that happens. In fact, I got this exercise from when I went through a Keller Williams class, my very, very first month in the business. And you do that, you write a letter to yourself. So I did it. This was done, I think it was in December. And then, so I said, hey, it's been a wonderful year. And I wrote down, I think 10 bullet pointed things I wanted to either buy or achieve or do. So you forget about it. Once you seal it, you give it to the instructor, and then they figure out how to get it back to you the following year. Well, it's pretty strange to get a letter from yourself because you know your handwriting. You're like, okay, this is weird. I open up the letter and I'm almost in tears because of the 10 items I had on that list for 2016, I achieved 7 of them. All the way down to the type of dog I wanted to buy and what I was going to name him, right? Wow. So I think there's power in, not only the visualization, but that self actualization could be done by simply writing yourself a letter and then supporting yourself with either a vision board or something else that keeps those things front and center.
Yeah, that's really good. And So those are some tips. Now, do you have any days that are just kind of down days and, maybe you don't do the calls you're supposed to do? And I mean, after 9 years, maybe it's getting better, but you kind of think back to, and maybe it's not, maybe there's still those days a lot, I don't know, but also thinking back to when you started, was that something that happened quite a bit? And like, I know a lot of people that go through that and, including myself, obviously we all have days like that. And then how did you get yourself back up off the mat? Like a lot of times that's when people are like, oh, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I shouldn't do this. They get a lot of rejection, a lot of no's, a lot of all that stuff. What are some, like you are a coach. So what are some coaching tips for people that are going through that and like, well, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should quit. Maybe I should go back to my 6-figure job or whatever it is. What are some?
Yeah, I do still have them. Early on, I mean, that was common, right? Because I didn't have to make calls like I was my first couple of years in real estate that when I was in retail. And so I think the difference for me was that I was on a small salary. So like if I didn't do it, my job is in jeopardy, right? But I think for those that are doing it and they're a solopreneur or they're not, I mean, it's 100% commission based. I think it's directly tied back to what type of lifestyle do you want to live? Now, truthfully, the people I coach, if they are not powered by a big vision of the lifestyle they want to live, it's not all about money, right? Like for me, my girlfriend and I love to travel. Now we need some money to do that, but that's experience. We don't buy a lot of things. But you've got to be connected. And that's what I coach around. And I think if you hear it from people or I hear from people, we can tell pretty clearly just on how they talk about it. How connected are they to it? And then I see it in, okay, do their actions match their words? Because if they don't, then I have to work backwards in the coaching to find out, okay, what are they connected to? What are they really going after? And do they have a relationship with that, right? Because that happens. That'll happen, probably more often than we would want to. But if you don't have that conversation with yourself or have an accountability partner to help you through that, then we stay in a long progression of decline, right? And so it may be, you may have 20 days of calling. If you're doing Monday through Friday, you may have one day every week or one day every other week. Okay, so what? Get back off it, get reconnected to your purpose and go do it. Because the harsh reality is if you can't get comfortable with that process, and that process being making the calls, but also giving yourself a little grace and then just getting back on the bike. Well, any business that requires you making calls and talking to leads and procuring business, probably not for you.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Now, I do the same thing, not just with the people that I coach, but when we, myself and my business partners purchased our team a couple of years ago, the thing that resonates with me more than ever now with my team is now the decisions that we make on the types of leads we're bringing in or the different parts of the infrastructure that we're using or the conversations we're having, they don't just impact me. They now impact the direct, every agent on my team and the livelihood, right? And sometimes that requires a really frank conversation. In fact, an agent yesterday just left my team because of conversations we were having that were leading up to, he wasn't willing to put in the work. I was like, man, well, how long can you go without a paycheck without it interrupting your relationships? Because he was married and he's like, well, it already is. Like, okay. So you can either do the work and you can build your business, but that's going to take about 90 days for you to see and realize that. Or you can go get a job where you have consistent income. Which one are you going to do? Well, he chose that. And that's great because now he's able to get that relationship reconciled because now financial issues are not going to be part of any of their problems.
Yeah, just letting people be people.
That's right.
It's a good thing for all of us whenever people quit. I always have a hard time when I see people give up on their dreams. That's how I look at it. But sometimes I guess you got to do that in order to.
I did tell them, I was like, listen, I tell my team this. There are rubber balls in life and there are glass balls. And the ones that you're juggling, and you have to decide, you have to have clarity on what are the glass balls. For me, it was the relationship with my daughter and my kids. Like, I was missing their school events. I could not allow that ball to drop.
Mm-hmm.
Real estate, in the grand scheme of things, for people can be viewed as a rubber ball, and it'll always be here. And he's got an open door to come back, because the glass ball, the relationship with his wife, and the stresses that were happening financially, like that was considered a glass ball.
Right. That makes sense. That's really awesome. So what are some, where are you going right now? What is your vision for your agency, and what drives you now? Like, it probably changed a lot in the last 9 years. What are some things that drive you now, that get you out of bed in the morning, that, cause you to work hard, and tell us a little bit too, what drives you? And then also, I would be curious on a work day, give people like kind of where it started and where it is now, as far as like actually what a day looks like in the life and times of Mike.
Yeah. Well, let's go the first one, because our vision is, if we want to quantify it, we're going to go to 1,000 transactions in the next 4 years. Okay. So we'll probably end up about 450 again this year, but we're all based, everything we do is based out of our office here in Salt Lake City. So in order for us to reach a larger audience, we're going to have to expand. So that could be to Boise, it could be to Vegas or Denver, or any of the smaller cities in between. Okay. The other vision we have is continually providing opportunity for our agents. Like, we want to make our business and our corporation a company where nobody would ever want to leave. Okay. And part of that is what type of opportunities, what type of mobility, movement do people have to continue, either whether it be to make more money or to experience different things. And so part of what we've done just this year is we've purchased a property management company. So now that helped us provide opportunity for a couple of agents on our team that were super excited about it, right? Probably more their niche. And now we've grown it since we took over. We had 104 doors. So this happened in April, and now we're like 115, right? So that provided an opportunity. We're looking at, what other areas of the business, whether it be the lending side, whether it be the title side, whether it be the insurance side, what are areas we can get into to A, provide more opportunity for our team, and B, better serve the clients that we're getting into business with. That's where we're going. I think a typical day for me is, because my daughter now is driving, and my son can walk to his middle school, like, I'm in the office by about 7:30. And typically on Mondays and Fridays, I'm dealing either with clients on the buy sell side, or I'm dealing with recruiting, and that's throughout the day. So buyer appointments, seller appointments, are more likely recruiting appointments on those 2 days. And then Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I'm coaching people all around the country. I've got about 20 clients, and then Saturdays, I did an open house last Saturday. I'll do an open house this Saturday. And I do those because it's another way for me to stay connected, because I don't do the volume that I did when I first began.
So tell us when you first began. Tell us how many, I don't know how you grew it. Do you how many doors you knocked, how many calls you'd make? What was kind of a number that you had in order to build, to 30 sales in your first year, I think is pretty good in real estate. And what were some tangible, like, what were some numbers that you ran in order to get there?
Yeah, well, we're fortunate on our team, even when we were smaller, that we had a good supply of leads coming in. Yet, calling leads is like panning for gold. Like, you're just not going to strike it every time. So really getting proficient with scripts and the dialogue, and even maybe more important is what we call the language of sales. Some other elements of NLP of, how do you have conversations with people and truly connect? That was something, my gosh, I wish I would have known when I was in retail, because from a sales perspective, we would have done much better and I would have been a more effective leader.
Mm-hmm.
But it was calls. I made 9 to 11, 9 to 11:30 every single day, Monday through Friday. And typically I found it was about 20 calls, 20 contacts, meaning not just 20 dials. It was about 20 contacts to an appointment. And as I got better, more scripted, better at the language of sales and all that, I found I got maybe to 14 or 15 contacts, right? Now in a shifting market right now, it's literally probably 40 to 50 contacts, right? Because there's what people read and listen to. There's just a lot of fear and uncertainty out there in the marketplace as to, well, should I buy or should I sell? And so you truly have to talk to more people. And that'll always be the backbone of anybody in sales as an entrepreneur. Well, I don't care if it's insurance or whether it's real estate or anything in between. You have to have the ability to call, and you have to have that skill set. And if you don't, ask around and find people that you can get connected with to sharpen those skills, because you can have a conversation, but not every conversation is equal, right? And once you can uncover the motivation of somebody and truly lock arm in arm with what it is they're trying to do, why that's important to them, well, then you have a true opportunity to show your value by meeting up with them on an appointment. So that's how I measured it. I still, to this day, I'm telling my agents 40 to 50 contacts.
So that would be a day. Would you make 40 to 50 contacts a day?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you used to be able to do it in 2.5, maybe 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on what you were calling, and maybe you were on a speed dialer. Right now, that may take you double the amount of time, right? I just ran a statistic the other day here in Salt Lake. We had, over the last 30 days, we had 2,500 home sales and we had 18,000 agents.
Wow.
Okay. So just doing the math, you have 87% of the agents that did not have a paycheck last month. But the reality is that's factoring if it was a 1-to-1 ratio. The simple fact is you've got agents that are doing multiple deals. So that percentage is probably closer to 90% of agents did not feed their families last month, right?
Right.
And that's an opportunity, spinning it full circle, that's an opportunity from recruiting for me. Because now you've got agents out there that aren't skilled. They're not being trained. They're with a brokerage that doesn't specialize in that. And so now myself and the person I'm hiring to be a full-time recruiter for us, that is going to be our approach of how we continue to grow this organization. Because we've got agents out there that love doing what they do, but they don't know how to work through the current market. And so that's sort of how we're going to grow over the next couple of years, because I expect the market to be pretty challenging during that time.
It's good. And it's an opportunity for anyone right now. I don't know who's listening to this and what your market's like, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of unrest, which is a great time. As Andy calls it, his blood in the water. I don't really like that interpretation, but anyway, this is a great time to get aggressive and to grow, because if you know what you're talking about and you're willing to work on yourself, this is a really good time to get in the market, because a lot of people are slowing down or quitting or going back to jobs or whatever in all kinds of industries. So if you're in sales or you're an entrepreneur, now is a good time. Don't slow down, go harder and go all in and bet on yourself and give it all you got. Have you always had self-belief in everything that you've kind of done, Mike? Like when you quit your job and came in, I know, you worked really hard. Did you ever go, well, maybe this isn't for me? Did you ever have those moments? And if so, or if you've seen people, how do you work through that? Because I feel self-belief is a huge, huge thing to success in any industry. And a lot of people don't necessarily have it. Maybe they weren't believed in as kids and whatever else. What are some things that help maybe grow self-belief for you or for others?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've had it. I think it's been very short-lived. Um, and I always go back to my college career because I was a decent, I ran cross country and track in high school. I was decent. I was on some really good teams. Individually, I was good, but not great. Um, and I ended up walking on to the University of Utah, but I didn't initially make the walk on. Like they were looking for two people, and I was third in the tryout. So um, that moment of going from not making the walk on to walking on to ultimately getting a scholarship and lettering and then transferring schools, that whole process back when I was 18 has stuck with me probably subconsciously of, okay, don't give up. You're going to have bad days. You're going to get beat down. And I do have those moments. Yet I think one of the things, my superpower is probably my stubbornness, cleverly disguised as resilient, right? And and so when I'm coaching people, I think we have to acknowledge where we're at,
Mm.
right? Um, and I mean, Angela Duckworth wrote the book Grit, and grit can be learned, right? But you got to put yourself in tough situations in order to become more grittier, right? Um, and so one of the things lately I've been really coaching people with when they tell me it's hard, right? I'm taking this from the Duke basketball coach, the female basketball coach. Can't remember her name, Kara something. And if you haven't seen the speech, go to YouTube. It's fantastic. But she talks about how often do we as humans think, okay, I'm just going to finish this and then it'll be easier. Well, I know I have, right? I'm just going to finish this call, it'll get easier. Or I'm just going to get through this week and it'll get easier. But the simple fact is, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. And she says, instead of that approach, we've got to learn to do hard better.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, yep. That's sort of something I can rally behind and help people that I'm coaching and talking with that, I can't think of a time. Maybe you can. I really can't think of a time when it truly got easier.
Mm.
And
Yep.
so, as we coach people, it's like, it's not. And have them tell you when it got easier. Because typically when you get done with something, something else shows up. Just happens. We had a wonderful time in London. I came home. I was like, okay, this was the best vacation ever. I came home and my son's room was flooded from a broken sprinkler line. Didn't get easier, it got harder. Right?
Right.
And I think that's cyclical. I think it happens. Sometimes we don't slow down enough to say, okay, well, yeah, if it's going to get harder, we just need to get used to things being hard and just hit it head up.
What is it Les Brown or is it Jim Rohn? I get the two of them. I'm not sure. Which one is it that, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better?
I think that's Brene Brown.
The Brene Brown. Anyway. And so, that's kind of what you're talking about is, wish it was easier, wish it was better, wish you were better. And don't look for the easy. And I mean, and if anyone listen to this, they're like, well, that sounds terrible. Well, being broke is terrible too. So, pick your heart. So it's not any better necessarily working at a job where you have a boss telling you, if you can take time off, if you can't take time off, all the things. I know people that haven't been able to go to their own wedding or they haven't been able to go to a family funeral or haven't been able to go to important things because whoever signs your paycheck runs your life. So, if you're listening to this, you're like, man, it sounds so tough. I was thinking of being an entrepreneur, but it sounds so tough. Well, yeah, it's got its tough moments, but I tell you what, it's a lot better to cry in a limo than it is to cry on a street corner. So, there's just a few things like people are listening like, man, it sounds so rough. What is, but like, it's hard to be rich sometimes. And it's also hard to be broke, but it's a lot easier being rich than broke. I'll tell you what, I've seen both sides and been on both sides. So just say that. So, yeah. Anyway, I really appreciate this time, Mike. I know everyone got a lot of gold. I always wrap up with 3 final questions and then anything that maybe we didn't touch on that you just think would be really valuable to our listeners. First final question is we did talk about purpose. So someone's looking for their purpose. What's one sentence that you would use to help them find it?
What's one word?
Or one sentence.
Where do you want to be in 20 years? How do you want your lifestyle to be in 20 years?
What do you want in 20 years? That's pretty straight up, easy question. I love it. Number 2, and you might have more than one, but what's a favorite quote that comes to mind and why?
Well, I think recently, outside of the one I shared with you from the Duke coach, my coach shared something with me, and it goes along the lines of what you said. He goes, yes, the market's hard. Lead generating's hard. Finding qualified buyers is hard. Motivating sellers is hard. But you know what else is hard? Not having a paycheck. And that has resonated with me because the market that we're in, we've got a choice. We've got a choice to do the work or not do the work. And it's just that, it's a choice.
I love it. That's so good. And then number 3 question is, what's one word or sentence you would want on your gravestone?
Resilient.
Resilient or stubborn.
Or stubborn.
I love it. So cool. So if you run into someone in a coffee shop and they're like, hey, Mike, that was an awesome podcast, learned so much. What's something that maybe we didn't touch on that you just think would be really important for people to know about or hear?
You know what? I think surrounding yourself with the right cast of people that are going to support you. And I think that includes a coach, right? And I'm not promoting my own coaching. I'm promoting the fact that when I went through my divorce, 5 years ago, I had to do an inventory of who were the people that were around me and making an upgrade. And I'm still friends with the people that are not in my circle, but I needed to get with people that were going to hit me with the hard truth and challenge me. And so I think that's A, and I think B, having a coach, somebody that can hold you accountable to what you said you were going to do.
Have a coach. I love it. So cool. As always, listeners, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and let's go out there. Let's change one starfish or one person at a time, and together we can change the world. Thanks so much for the time, Mike. I appreciate it.
I loved it. Have a good one.